Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. It has been our endeavor to help UPSC aspirants around the country, particularly those from remote areas, by providing them with engaging and relevant content to help them realize their dream of cracking the elite civil services examination. As a part of this effort, we are happy to announce the launch of a new initiative on our channel to reach out to our 1.7 million subscriber base and beyond. Today, we begin a new daily initiative called The Big News. Through this, we aim to cover key topics by focusing on big breaking news as and when it happens. The focus of this series will be on short and crisp analysis of big developments taking place in India and the world. So do support this initiative by liking the video, by sharing your comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So today, we shall focus on President Joe Biden's call to Chinese President Xi Jinping, during which he has apparently warned China against any support to Russia. See, just a few hours ago, US President Joe Biden held an important telephonic conversation with his Chinese counterpart. During this call, the two leaders primarily spoke about concerns surrounding Russia's invasion of Ukraine and its impact on global geopolitics. As per reports emerging from Chinese media, President Xi Jinping has underlined that such conflicts and aggressions do not serve anyone's interests. Whereas the US President on the other side has used the opportunity to warn China against extending any support to Russia, or else the Western countries led by US would be forced to impose a steep price on China for any such support. During this conversation, which lasted around 2 hours, the primary focus of President Biden was to focus on Russia's brutal assault in Ukraine. In several videos, we have discussed Russia's continuing assault against Ukrainian cities, including against civilian populated areas, and how this has caused irreparable damage to human life, property, and infrastructure in the country. Ever since the Russian invasion began, Russian forces have particularly targeted key Ukrainian cities, which includes not just the capital Kiev, but also other important civilian populated areas such as Mariupol, Sumy, Kharkiv, etc. Especially in the last few days, Russian forces have stepped up their attacks in and around these key cities, which has caused enormous damage and human suffering. In the last few days, Russia has even extended its strikes against western Ukrainian cities such as Lviv, which are located close to Poland's border, and it also happens to be NATO's front line, where Russian missile strikes are being reported closer to the border. So considering this ongoing crisis in Ukraine, the two leaders have primarily focused on Russia's violations in Ukraine and the possible implications of this conflict, not just on US-China relations, but also on the larger international world order. See, there is no doubt that China happens to be a close ally of Russia, and especially the two leaders, President Putin and Xi Jinping, share a great personal equation, and for all matters, China would be extending military and strategic and diplomatic support to Russia. But however, China's official public statements have been guarded and cautious, even though it has stopped short of criticizing Russia's actions in Ukraine. China has deliberately stayed away from criticizing Putin and the Russian invasion, but at the same time, it has been playing a balancing act by not publicly offering any explicit support to Russia. In fact, when most of the resolutions came up at the United Nations that targeted Russia, China has also abstained from the votes, much like India has done, thereby highlighting its attempts to balance its interests while continuing to maintain its strategic relations with Russia. In fact, President Xi Jinping has even offered to mediate between Russia and Ukraine to bring the conflict to an end. But Western countries, particularly the US, finds it difficult to have faith in these statements of China. Because according to US, China has been fanning Russian disinformation about the conflict, and most likely it is already extending covert strategic, diplomatic, and military support to Russia. The US is particularly worried about how China could play a role in helping Russia in bypassing the Western sanctions, because Beijing's dominant economic position thus provide it with a potential opportunity to help Russia to weather and bypass the crippling sanctions imposed by the Western countries on the Russian banking and financial system. If such direct economic and military support were to come from China towards Russia, then Western countries would be forced to consider imposing secondary sanctions against China as well, thereby risking an escalation in the geopolitical tensions between China and US, and could also possibly risk further turmoil in the global markets. But despite this, the US has sent out a warning to China during this call, and reportedly, President Biden has warned Xi Jinping of possible secondary sanctions against China as well if it were to extend such direct support to Russia. Because the US government believes that it is still possible to pressurize China to take a neutral position and abstain from directly backing Russia, because even President Xi Jinping is looking at domestic considerations. Xi Jinping is eagerly looking forward to secure a third term in power during the upcoming 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. So, in such an important year, the Chinese president would also be mindful of the impact of economic sanctions on domestic interests, especially on his political interests, because China has significant economic ties with the Western countries as compared with Russia. Just take a look at this data. Trade between European Union and China stood at $800 billion last year. Between US and China, the number was more than $750 billion. Compared to this, trade between China and Russia is just around $150 billion. So even though Russia and China do enjoy close strategic and defense relations, it is highly unlikely that China would risk the strong economic relations with Western countries. And it is this fact that the US is trying to leverage in order to warn China against providing any direct support to Russia. So with this, let's end the discussion for today. Thanks for watching.